let's go ahead and watch this other video.
For years, Blood on the Dance Floor has been one of the most
That's what we're looking
bands to
into.
ever come out of the scene era. The band was mocked for its music, criticized for bullying minors, and dragged into one.
And we all went through that phase. Well, most of us went through that phase where we listened to them. We cannot fucking deny it. I'm cringing at myself for doing it, but
controversy after another. But those headlines were only the beginning, because behind the neon hair, MySpace fame, and sold-out crowds were allegations that involved multiple underage fans. Accusations so serious that they would follow the group's leader for more than a decade, turning what started as a front-door success story into one of the darkest scandals in alternative music. But the band wasn't always like this, because by the time it emerged from Orlando in 2006, the internet was already changing how music careers were built, and few artists understood that shift quite like Jesus David Torres, better known as Davi Vanity. Long before TikTok, Spotify playlists, or viral short-form content, there was MySpace, a platform that allowed musicians to speak directly to fans without relying on radio stations, record labels, or music television. And for a generation of teenagers spending hours customizing profiles and ranking friends, MySpace became the center of youth culture, and Blood on the Dance Floor quickly learned how to use that environment better than almost anyone else in the growing scene movement.
I guess we're the first of the kind. I really did enjoy MySpace a lot better than.
Oh God, is this you now?
Any of the current social media.
Ew.
Like, literally, MySpace was the shit.
Yet, the surprising thing is that Blood on the Dance Floor began as a revolving door collaboration, rather than a stable band. Early contributors included Christopher Mongello and Rebecca Fugit, although lineups shifted constantly as the band searched for an identity. During those formative years, the sound evolved into what would eventually be labeled grunge, a genre that blended electronic beats, heavily processed vocals, elements of screamo, hip-hop rhythms, and party-focused lyrics into something that sounded perfectly suited to the colorful, chaotic aesthetic of late 2000s internet culture.
The viola up there is crazy.
Music or noise almost didn't matter because the target audience was growing at an incredible pace, and they loved the music. That's my favorite song, and I wish I were a stage security guard because you can be right by the stage. You did a great job shooting the video. I've never seen this band live, and they were fantastic in this video. But what separated Blood on the Dance Floor from many of their contemporaries was their understanding that accessibility created loyalty. Instead of maintaining distance from fans, Davi Vanity cultivated an image of constant availability through direct messages, comment sections, and online interactions. Teenagers who felt ignored at school or isolated at home suddenly had access to someone they viewed as a celebrity, and that relationship became one of the band's most powerful tools. And as a result, fans not only listened to the band's songs, they also felt connected to the people creating them. As the scene subculture expanded across North America, that sense of personal connection helped transform Blood on the Dance Floor from a local act into an internet phenomenon. Yet, to make matters even better for the band, a major step forward came in 2007 with the arrival of Garrett Ecstasy. His addition helped stabilize the project during a crucial period and contributed to the release of It's Hard to Be a Diamond in a Rhinestone World, an album that became closely associated with the group's early popularity. During this era, the band embraced every visual trend associated with the scene culture, including brightly colored hair, dramatic fashion choices, heavy makeup, and an intentionally over-the-top image that made them instantly recognizable online. Their music videos and promotional photos spread rapidly across MySpace pages, forums, and fan communities.
God, I remember that music video. What the fuck?
Its time in the group ended in 2009, and although the departure was often publicly explained as a result of creative disagreements and personal differences, years later, discussions surrounding his exit became connected to allegations about Davi Vanity's behavior toward underage fans that had already begun circulating behind the scenes. While many of those concerns remained largely confined to rumors at the time, the departure would later be viewed by some observers through a very different lens once more serious accusations emerged. But I will take you through that in detail later. Anyways, after Garrett's departure, Davi asked Jay Von Monroe, who had been a longtime fan of the band, to join the group as Garrett's replacement. His arrival marked the beginning of what many fans still consider Blood on the Dance Floor's commercial peak, because Jay's vocals complemented Davi's style, and together they created a partnership that significantly expanded the band's reach. Albums such as Epic in 2010 and All the Rage in 2011 helped push the group into a much larger spotlight, allowing them to move beyond internet fame.
Oh
into
god,
broader
dude. Okay, yeah. Seeing all the clips and everything, it's so cringy how cringe I was back in the day, because yeah, I did listen to this music. I'm not even gonna fucking try to deny it.
Youth culture. And during this period, Blood on the Dance Floor appeared on the Vans Warped Tour, one of the most important touring festivals for alternative music fans. On top of that, their merchandise became available through Hot Topic, placing the band's image in shopping malls across the country. Their music also reached younger audiences through projects like the theme song for Smosh's animated series, Oishi High School Battle.
We're gonna skip that because I don't want to get copyright claimed by them.
Who spent their time online and embraced the colorful identity of the scene movement. And as the band's visibility kept growing, another notable figure who briefly entered the story during this period was Jeffree Star. Already famous in MySpace and music, Star collaborated with Blood on the Dance Floor during the Epic era and helped bring additional attention to the project. However, the relationship soon became controversial when Jeffree publicly accused Davi of being a predator, and in 2010, the statements generated significant discussion within online communities and
censoring through
created
silencing
between the two performers. Unfortunately, the story did not end there, because several years later, Jeffree walked back portions of those criticisms after feeling the band was being victimized and collaborated with Davi again on their 2014 single.
That says a lot about you, doesn't it, Jeffree?
The album Bitchcraft, creating confusion among fans and critics alike. Looking back, that reversal would become one of many examples cited by observers who argued that warning signs surrounding Davi were frequently ignored, minimized, or pushed aside during the band's rise. Regardless, Blood on the Dance Floor remained at the height of its popularity, powered by internet fame, devoted fans, and a rapidly growing cultural footprint that seemed impossible to slow down. But the deeper people dug into the band's past, the harder it became to dismiss the accusations as internet rumors, because what started as scattered stories shared on message boards and social media gradually formed a pattern that stretched across years, involved numerous alleged victims, and reportedly pointed back to the same person. Throughout the late 2000s and much of the 2010s, Davi built a direct relationship with fans through platforms such as MySpace and Facebook, which were especially powerful during that era because artists could communicate with followers without managers, journalists, or record labels acting as gatekeepers. For many young fans, receiving a message from a musician they admired felt personal and exciting, and according to numerous later allegations, that excitement became a vulnerability that could be exploited. According to accounts that would later be collected by journalists and investigators, Davi allegedly used a remarkably consistent approach when interacting with young fans, many of whom
these creeps usually do,
and 16 years old, and sometimes even way younger. Several accusers claimed they were invited into private spaces through promises of helping with merchandise, appearing in videos, attending exclusive meet and greets, or simply spending time with someone they viewed as a celebrity. But as these stories accumulated, former fans began describing a dark environment where admiration for a performer was taken advantage of and boundaries were crossed. One of the earliest incidents took place in September 2009 in
Sorry, I'm
Colorado,
uncomfy. That's why I'm not saying a lot.
Live spot, where Blood on the Dance Floor was scheduled to perform an all-ages show. According to later testimonies and statements from former band member Garrett Ecstasy, Davi allegedly separated a teenager named Torin Nicole from the crowd, and she followed him innocently, thinking that Davi was just interacting with a fan.
Hear him really well, and he said, "Hey, let's take a walk outside," which I was 17 at the time. I was fangirling, and I was like, "Oh my God, Davi Vanity wants to take a walk with me. That's so exciting."
However, what happened next would traumatize Torin for years to come.
to one of the stores that was just past the venue. I mean, but then he pulls me back in near an electrical box where there's kind of like an inlet. Pulled me back into this electrical area and, I mean, immediately pushed me down onto my knees and then shoved my head on his crotch. And then he did pump once, and then he did a plate on.
Oh, one
Situation
pump
escalated
McGuff.
quickly and
One pump McGuff. No, we're not cheering for that. But that's that. We're not cheering for what happened. We're cheering because he only lasted one time. He's a fucking loser. Fucking creep.
enough that police were called, and Davi was taken into custody on September 13th on suspicion of felony sexual. However, the case never moved forward to a trial because, according to Torin, there was no evidence even after the rape kit was administered because she had cleaned herself up after the gross experience.
And I think that's actually when I ran into Ariel and she told me what had happened to her. Well, she did not specifically in detail tell me what had happened to her, just that something had happened to her.
It happened. And Ariel, what do you remember about Torin's state of mind at the time?
Yeah, I was there when she was telling her boyfriend about it.
As a result,
Oh,
and Davi
great.
was released and consistently denied wrongdoing, arguing that the allegations were false and pointing to the lack of a criminal conviction as evidence supporting his position. It was that night that led Garrett Ecstasy to eventually quit the band and accuse Davi of PDF stuff, but not before
Good.
performing the remaining dates of the OMFG tour, where he and the other bands on the tour, including Electric Valentine and Weston Buck, concluded without Davi after he was kicked out of the tour. However, after Davi dodged this case, he posted a blog entry to the band's MySpace account, proclaiming that Garrett had been kicked out of the band for various alleged offenses, including being a frequent user of unspecified drugs, stealing the band's tour van, stealing blood on the dance floor from him by performing the remaining shows without him, deleting unreleased recordings, wrecking the tour van, and stealing money from him and the band. In response,
Oh, he's the worst. He's the worst one. I don't pay attention to what I did. He's the bad one. Oh, I'm getting slighted. Predator scramble.
Garrett posted, "Wow. To all the fans that really believe Davi's bullshit lies on that fucking blog, you guys need to change who your heroes are. I told you the fucking truth. It's up to you to not believe that piece of shit. And if I stole blood on the dance floor, why is Davi still continuing it?" And Garrett's side of the story made more sense to some because around the same period, Davi was also accused
Exactly.
by yet another girl named Ariel Klein of inappropriate sexual conduct when she was just 16 years old.
I had a marker. I guess he was doing autographs. I didn't have anything for him to sign. I was like, I need an autograph, and I had big cleavage at the time. He signed my part. I am just so embarrassed about, but you know, I was 16. I wanted attention, wanted the clout. I'm like, hey, Davi, can I have a kiss?
Seeing this as a free meal, Davi accepted the
Ew,
request
why'd
despite
you-
knowing that
Why? Marcella, why'd you phrase it like that? That's gross. Please don't do that.
she was underage, but proposed a different way to fulfill Ariel's wishes.
So he walks me out back down the stairs that lead into the venue, and we go outside, and I'm like, we're just in his car, and he drives across the street. And I'm like, this is getting super weird.
After sweet-talking her and then taking her to a secluded location, Ariel thought that it couldn't get any weirder, but
Nope.
unfortunately,
That's
she
when
was
it gets
wrong.
worse.
You know, just trying to make me comfortable with everything. And he's like, so you want to kiss? I'm like, yeah. And then he just, you know, pretty much just starts aggressively making out with me. I'm like, oh, this is more than a kiss. Okay. And he moves on to feel me up, grab my chest.
As if to calm her even more, Davi allegedly went on to compliment Ariel's body right before taking things even further.
Then he starts,
Oh,
you know, grabbing
that's
my
not how you
hand,
do
putting it
that.
in his lap. He's erect, you know, rubbing against it. I'm like, not wanting to do that. And he keeps pulling my hand back, pulling it back, and I'm just like, hey, I don't want to do all of this.
But after not getting what he wanted, Davi grew cold and eventually drove her back to the venue, ditched her without walking her back, and gave her a dirty look as she departed. Yet,
Of
this
course.
was not the last of Davi's victims, because an internet personality named Damian Leonhardt, who was widely known online as Jesse Slaughter, would also come out to expose him in 2010. Now that year, Jesse had become the target of one of the earliest large-scale internet harassment campaigns. generating headlines with much of the public
What's up with your
discussion
mic, bro?
focusing on cyberbullying and viral internet culture. However, years later, Jesse publicly accused Davi of bothering them when they were 10 years old in 2009, while Davi was 24.
Damien, you were 10 years old at the time.
Yes.
This was the first time someone had publicly accused Davi of grape, and so, in 2020, Jessie shared her testimony with journalist Chris Hansen about the alleged sexual assault.
He was very obsessed with, like, my mouth and putting his fingers in my mouth, and then, like, very soon wanted...
We've all been there, but not like that. Come on,
yeah,
man.
I was a 10-year-old, and he fingered cake into my mouth.
That's not what I meant. We all like to stick fingers in mouths, but come on, keep them out of the children's mouths. Keep all their consenting adults.
I'm in a bathroom.
This was
That's what I
clearly a
meant.
pattern
I'm
that
sorry.
Most of Davi's alleged victims went through, and since most of them were underage, it was clearly a horrifying experience.
He taught me most of what the beginning of my ed was, and that's legitimately horrifying to think about.
Despite this, their relationship went on and off for quite a while, with Jesse hoping that one day they would finally become Davi's woman.
10 to 12, you were with on and off Davi Vanity, hoping that you'd be his woman, his girl.
Yeah.
But it was not the experience they'd hoped for, because over a subsequent 16 months, Jesse accused Davi of repeatedly raping them under the guise of BDSM-style activity. And while this was a bit extreme for a child, Davi would verbalize violence and claim it was part of a consensual dynamic. Eventually, rumors spread online that Davi had slept with the then 11-year-old Jesse. But while Jesse initially denied the rumors at the time, the internet community, particularly 4chan, launched a massive harassment campaign against the child, doxing them and sending
Oh,
threats. In
that's not
response
what
to
you
the
do.
severe harassment, Jesse's father, Gene Leonhardt, recorded an angry video.
I remember this
defending his
video.
son, as he should.
I remember
In the
that video.
He threatened the trolls, claiming he had backtraced their IP addresses and reported them to the cyber police, famously shouting,
I remember
"You've
that
done
video.
goofed, and consequences will never be the same."
And I know who it's coming from because I backtraced it with the police, because you done goofed.
As these clips went viral, instead
You
of
done
addressing
goofed.
the serious nature of the allegations, Davi chose to mock the victim and their father. With the help of Jay, who was at the time still a member of the band, they wrote and recorded the song "You Done Goofed" as a diss track to the then 11-year-old Jesse.
Yeah, no, we're gonna skip that.
Wow, imagine writing a song about an 11-year-old when you're bordering on 30s. What a sad, sad, sick man. I can't imagine what it must be like to be an 11-year-old girl who had her biggest idol not only use her, but throw her under the bus, get his fan base to bully her, make meme parody videos about her, but to top it all off, write a diss track like this. That's something I don't think most adults can take, let alone an 11-year-old. This case stayed in the dark for over 5 years, and the FBI only got involved and opened an investigation on Davi following the 2018 HuffPost expose and Jesse's subsequent public statements. And things only got worse for Davi from here, because in 2011, HuffPost published an extensive investigation that exposed
I'm
that
starting to
Davi
realize it's an AI
raped
voice.
over 20 women.
Allegations and reports that he has been involved in inappropriate sexual relationships with at least 22 underage
Yikes.
young women.
While those allegations
Talk about
were
using
generating
your
headlines,
fame to
former
get
band
what you
member Jay
want.
began speaking more openly about his own experiences. When Jay left blood on the dance floor in 2016, the initial public statements were relatively vague, leading many fans to assume the split was simply another disagreement between musicians. However, later disclosures painted a far more troubling picture. Jay alleged that Davi exercised extensive control over finances, claiming he was denied fair access to earnings generated by the band despite years of touring and recording. According to Jay's statements, that financial control extended into daily life, leaving him dependent on Davi for necessities, including housing and food. Additionally, Jay described severe emotional strain during his years in the group, explaining that he felt isolated from family members and trapped within a situation that became increasingly difficult to escape. But the most disturbing claims were allegations that Jay was pressured to continue touring despite serious illness, and further alleged that access to necessary HIV HIV medication was interfered with during that period. With a former associate speaking publicly against Davi, the image of blood on the dance floor increasingly shifted from a controversial scene ban to a case study in how celebrity influence, fan culture, and unchecked power can create conditions where allegations remain hidden for years before finally reaching public attention. But this would not last for long. The first major structural break came in April 2019, not too long ago, when streaming platforms began removing the band's catalog. Spotify and Google Play Music took down large portions of their discography, including albums and singles that had once been heavily circulated across the scene community. With the removal,
I didn't even notice that.
Internal policy enforcement around hate content and material associated with violence. That removal had a direct impact on reach and revenue, since digital streaming had become the primary way most fans accessed music. Older fans could still find uploads on secondary sites or archived platforms, but the official presence of Blood on the Dance Floor in major digital stores became increasingly limited. And while the streaming collapse was unfolding, Chris Hansen, known for his earlier work on To Catch a Predator, launched renewed interest in online predator investigations through independent media platforms. Around 2020 and 2021, he publicly stated that he was examining the allegations connected to Davi, following the HuffPost investigation that had surfaced in 2019. As part of this effort, Chris interviewed multiple accusers on his podcast-style programming, including Megan Hood and Elizabeth Fabor, who detailed their accounts in long-form discussions. These interviews expanded public understanding of the allegations because they were presented in an investigative format, rather than short social media statements, allowing the details to be explored in greater depth. At the same time, attempts to directly confront Davi became part of the public narrative, but it wasn't as easy because direct interviews or on-camera confrontations were reportedly avoided, with communication often filtered through legal representatives or declined entirely. But as the public conversation continued, the role of fan communities also came under scrutiny. A portion of the remaining fan base, who remained loyal even after Davi rebranded as Kawaii Monster, continued to support the band despite the volume of allegations. Some supporters framed the situation as exaggerated or fabricated, while others treated the controversy as separate from
Monster is an accurate thing. Sorry, I was counting.
Online, where accusers and supporters often clashed, with discussions becoming highly emotional and deeply polarized. During this same period, Fallon Vendetta briefly became associated with the group between 2017 and 2019, which drew criticism as public allegations against Davi were already widely circulating online at that time. Observers questioned the decision to continue performing alongside him, given the level of controversy already surrounding the band. Eventually, her departure from the group was followed by a noticeable step back from public discussion of the issue, and she largely faded from the central narrative that continued to surround the band. By the mid-2020s, this combination of platform removal, investigative attention, and fragmented media coverage left the band in a strange position within internet culture. Their music still existed, but their presence in mainstream digital spaces had largely dissolved. What remained was a legacy defined by the disturbing allegations about the band's leader. And by 2026, the story of Davi sits in a very different place compared to the peak years of Blood on the Dance Floor, because the band that once filled Warped Tour stages and Hot Topic shelves now exists mostly in fragments scattered across the internet, independent uploads, and niche communities that still revisit the crunkcore era. And while Davi continues releasing music on his own terms, sometimes under variations of the Blood on the Dance Floor name, and sometimes through solo branding such as The Most Vivid Nightmares, the reach of these releases is extremely limited compared to the band's earlier distribution through mainstream platforms. What remains is a catalog that still circulates online in unofficial spaces, but without the visibility or legitimacy it once carried. Live performances have also changed dramatically from the band's earlier cultural footprint, because during the early 2010s, Blood on the Dance Floor could draw large crowds of young fans, especially during the height of their exposure through MySpace, Hot Topic merchandising, and festival appearances. On top of that, reported shows linked to Davi had been described as small, underground events that attract far fewer attendees, often accompanied by tension outside the venues. In several instances, these appearances have been met with protests of public criticism, reflecting how his reputation followed him into every attempt at rebuilding a live presence. The shift from packed festival stages to isolated performances illustrates how completely the audience base and industry support collapsed over time. But despite the scale of allegations that accumulated across more than a decade, legal outcomes have remained limited, and this has become one of the most discussed aspects of the entire case. Even with
What's the
dozens of
insane clown
individuals
posse doing
come
here?
forward and detailed accounts shared publicly, Davi has not faced a prison sentence, and no major conviction has resulted from the allegations. Many reports and analysis point to structural issues within the justice system, including statutes of limitations and the historical difficulty of prosecuting
You're
cases
gross.
involving internet-era and long-delayed reporting. And this is because victims often came forward years after the alleged incidents, and by that time, legal pathways were already significantly restricted. While Davi's career has remained in a state of decline and controversy, the people who were once connected to blood on the dance floor have taken very different paths. Jay has become one of the most visible voices to emerge from the group's aftermath, building a new identity in drag performance, and gradually stepping into advocacy work focused on HIV awareness and survivor support. His public presence now often centers on themes of recovery and personal rebuilding, and his story is frequently referenced
Was
as an
that him?
example
What
of
the
life
fuck?
continuing beyond a highly toxic creative environment. Garrett Ecstasy, who was part of the band during its early rise, has taken a different path entirely, remaining largely absent from public
That's
life.
not
His
Garrett.
disappearance from music and media discussions has often been interpreted as a sign of withdrawal from an era that carried significant controversy and emotional weight, and very little verified information exists about his current activities. The accusers, however, represent the most significant legacy of the entire timeline. The individuals who spoke publicly, including those interviewed in major investigations, contributed to a record that reshaped how the band is remembered. Their testimonies, shared across interviews, articles, and podcasts, collectively formed a body of evidence that influenced platform decisions, media coverage, and public perception. Even in the absence of full legal resolution, their willingness to come forward changed the trajectory of Davi's career and effectively ended his mainstream presence. And while most of the band's members had nothing to do with what Davi was doing, they still had to take a blow for the team, simply because the man who was supposed to be leading them chose to become what people regarded as a monster. Regardless, do you think that blood on the dance floor will ever recover from the mess created by their leader? To me, I don't think so. But would love to hear your thoughts.
No,
on comments
absolutely
below.
not.
And
They will
if you
not.
want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Okay, no, I'm kind of sorry I made us all watch that, but yeah. As much as I hate to admit it, yes, I was an emo child or a scene child, whatever you want to call it, because Dozy doesn't want to admit that I'm emo at all. But we were all there if we were in that phase in our younger years, and we all listened to Blood on the Dance Floor, and we all cringe super hard about it now. And I am super glad that nobody listens to them, and nobody even probably knows what the fuck I'm talking about if there are newer generations. Whenever I say that, because whenever I say Blood on the Dance Floor, they don't know who the fuck I'm talking about, which is a great fucking thing, because Davi was a fucking creep and couldn't keep a fucking band together and couldn't keep it in his fucking pants. I don't know, it's all cringe. It's just all gross. It's disgusting. Even looking back, the music wasn't even that good, so I don't know what the fuck I was doing. Like, I listen to so much better shit now. It's yeah. Anyway, I'm exhausted.